Have you wanted to know what God is like? In this video, I am going to share with you from my near-death experience what it is I felt like God was made of. And if you're like me, you probably want to know everything you can about God and about everything spiritual. If you don't know me, my name is Susan. Welcome to my channel. I was born clairvoyant. I had a hell of a time growing up. Really manifested dark night of the soul after dark night of the soul. And it wasn't until a near-death experience last summer in 2017 that the purpose of it all really crystallized for me. And now I help awakening women master their intuition, know their purpose, and explore their spiritual gifts. So again, welcome. If you are a woman and you're watching this video, I'd love to have you over on Facebook. I have a group called Divining Women. There's a link below. And we do a live Q&A every Thursday. I'll stay on there as long as it takes. We were on there for 2 hours last week. It's a lot of fun. And if you're curious like me, you'd probably love it. All right, let's jump in. This is number 6 in a 13-part series about my realizations from my near-death experience. And this number 6 is essentially, what is God made of? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, in my experience, I was in my astral body and I was completely engulfed in God's presence. What God appeared like to me was endless, blazing, golden rays of light. And I was kind of like a tea bag in a mug of tea, completely immersed in this God energy. And I was completely conscientious throughout this entire experience. And there actually is a video link below which details everything that did happen. It was not just with God. I was in the void at first, and then I was with God, and then I was with Jesus, who healed me from my chronic Lyme disease, which is why I had this experience in the first place. And then I also went to visit one of my guides. It was pretty epic. But in this main part where I spent this time with God, I was floating, if you will, completely immersed in these blazing golden rays. And what I noticed off the bat was I was actually feeling what God was made of. It wasn't just that I was in these rays and no, that's God, shining his energy toward me. It was more like this. If you were to take a chainsaw and cut through a tree, you would see there was nothing there but more of the same. That tree is just simply made of tree. If you want to call it wood, that's fine, but you know what I mean. If you were to slice through a tree, it would all be made of the same thing, homogeneous. And as I was in God's presence, that's what I was most aware of. That what he felt like viscerally to me was actually what he was made of. That there was no difference. It was almost like God was and is radiating as a single, unconditionally inclusive radio station. There was no reactivity. There was no shade or fluctuation in the love and light that he received me in. And that's how I often speak about God, that God is made of capital L love and capital L light. Now, I said this in a prior video. What he felt like, even more so than love actually, was freedom. And that's because I think down here in Earth School, the way that we experience love is so nuanced and so complex, and every person has so many different layers of experience and personal meaning attached to that word. We have so many different roles in our life. It's very difficult to conceptualize absolutely unconditional love. And I know many of you may say, well, I feel that way about my children. And I understand that. I do too. But even still, within that role as a mom, that's the thing. There is an expectation of a role. For example, with my children, I am expected to provide. I'm expected to make sure I've got food on the table for dinner and I've got food in the kitchen and I am overseeing their education, and you know what I mean. The way that God felt with this capital L love I'm describing, there were no conditions, there were no roles, there was no reactivity. God and this love and this light, it simply exists immovably. I'm not sure if you can wrap your mind around what I'm saying, because I know this is very difficult to put into words, but I guess how I would describe it is that energy, that presence of God, it simply is, and it never changes. And again, I know this is just my experience, and I honor whatever it is that you believe, and I honor all of your experiences as well. But in my experience, when I was with God, and we had a very sweeping and intimate conversation, it was without talking. It was, I guess you could say it was telepathic, but it felt more like instantaneous exchanges of emotional impressions. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It did not feel mental. It just felt like I was an extension of God. I guess that's how I would put it. And my greatest belief from this amazing experience is this, that I believe that you are God, that I am God, that I am actually a finite pinhead point of God energy. And that comes from this experience. And I was having this exchange with him, but it wasn't an exchange. There was nothing passing back and forth. There was not that feeling of separation. It was a visceral feeling of reunion and complete union. There was no space, if you want to speak about it linearly, to exchange. It was all just together instantaneously as one. And I did not lose my human personality, so I remained afraid. I had astral traveled on command that night. I was looking for help to get healed. Never did I expect to end up where I did, with God, with Jesus, with my guides. I never expected that. I was honestly going to just get out there in the astral realm and start looking around for some kind of a celestial being or an angelic being to help me. So my primary purpose was this, to get help with healing and get back home so I could complete my contract to raise my children. I didn't lose my fear. First of all, I ended up in the void. That scared me to death. I do have a different understanding of it today, which is in a different video. But I was also very afraid because really God's first question to me was, do you want to stay or go? Which was reasonable. The year prior had been, actually the many years before that, but I mean, it had been absolutely the hardest of my life. I was crawling around my house. I was leaving peanut butter and jellies out for my children like they were household pets. I had a walker and I had a cane. I was in a tremendous pain. I had an IV attached, to a port in my arm, and would have to exchange several IV bags of medicine a day. I mean, I was not living. I was doing the best I can, but I was a single mom. My one son has special needs, and I was definitely losing the battle. And I knew that night I was going to pass. So his first question to me set my fear that I already had just wild. I was terrified that God would not believe me and would come to some kind of conclusion like, look, you gave it your best shot, but it's pretty obvious, it's your time. I don't know why I would have thought that. And the idea of that now seems insane. But that is because my belief system changed so profoundly from this experience. And being in this experience, I kept my human personality. I kept my ego. I kept this vehicle of Susan Dyer, who was very afraid. Yet even through that fear, being steeped in God, again, like a tea bag in a mug of tea, I was absolutely aware that everything I was feeling of this presence of God, that it was all homogeneous, that it was what he was actually made of, that there were no ripples of anything else. God exists immovably and unchangeably and unconditionally as love and light. What this felt like in the English language, it felt like freedom because his love was so pure. It felt impossible. It was nothing like I had ever experienced or could even imagine before having felt that. And that also loops back to my experience and my belief of God actually not being just sentient. If a being is sentient, they are emotional based. They are more heart based. If a being is non-sentient, they have a different sort of engine, if you will. They're still a car, they're still a being or whatever, but their source is more logic based. So this love that God's made of, when I say in my experience that God is made of capital L love and capital L light, it's a bit different to understand insofar as we experience emotions, because this love encompasses the entire spectrum of both sentient and non-sentient. And I say that because this love is absolutely too pure. It was impossibly pure, which, as you know, for an emotional-based being, we have so many fluctuations. We have so many shades of every emotion, and we have so much context that has come from our own personal experiences. I am sure, to some extent, you would get just as many definitions or contexts or nuances connected to this word love as people you asked. That word and that concept has such heavy cultural meaning and stereotypes and expectations, and God's love did not. It was lighter than air. And that was another thing that was difficult to understand. When I woke up, I thought, if something was that pure in its love, I would expect to feel it in a clinging or wrapping or heavy and dense way. And instead, God actually felt, being in that presence, in that impossibly pure love and light, felt lighter than air, literally lighter than air, and joyous and free, no strings attached, no judgment. God was made of what I was steeped in. Unconditional, impossibly pure love that never vacillated at all. And this blazing golden light. Both these ingredients, if you will, viscerally felt like freedom. But what I took God to be made out of is that impossibly pure love and that endlessly blazing light. I hope this paints a more personal and curious picture for you. And I invite you to take my experience into your own meditation and see what comes of it. Invite yourself to connect with God. The way I believe each of us to be is this, that I am here because God wants to experience itself. And I encourage you, try this on. Try to envision God in this way. Open yourself up to a meditation and see what comes through, what tweaks for you, what adjusts for you, what resonates or doesn't resonate with you. And try to explore yourself. Invite emerging with God. Invite Him in. God, I open myself entirely to you. Assist me in uniting completely with you. And then try this. Ask God, after you've stated that intention and you've invited this union, try this. Try asking God, God, what do you wish to experience right now? And in your meditation, then sit in that quiet and observe and see what comes up for you. By asking God, by setting the stage for Him to share that with you. See what happens. And if anything feels off, or if it feels really good, then trust your gut above all and go with it. You can't mess this up. All you can do is further your soul growth and really get some awesome experiences. What I would also suggest is, before you try this, take a second and think about what is your most natural intuitive sense. Are you visual? Do you typically hear things? Are you really into music and sound? Or is it more of a gut feeling? Do you tend to know what other people are feeling? Do you get downloads? Do you suddenly know things and you don't know why? Have an idea of that. Just take a moment or two to kind of give that some thought. What is your most natural intuitive sense? So that way, after you've set your intention and after you've asked God, what is it that you want to experience in that moment, you have a rough idea of your best bet for how some kind of a synchronicity or knowing may bubble up for you. This is so fun. Don't lose sight of that, because that really is the whole deal. We've got many potential purposes. They all resonate from here. Whatever makes your heart sparkle is the one single root of all your potential purposes. And it's so important that each day we give some time and energy to spending time in that place and furthering everything that does make our heart sparkle. That is the most direct, quickest, and easiest way to expand and explore along spiritual lines. I hope you give this a try. If you like this video, please like it, share it with somebody else who might find it interesting. Subscribe for sure. Hit the bell, you'll be notified every time I upload. And if you're a woman, hop on over to Facebook. Come join me. We'll have a good time. You can book a session or a reading on my website at susandyer.com. And I will see you very soon for number 7, which is why pretty much I could have just murdered someone and I would have been embraced in the very same way, which is a crazy thought to be aware of in the middle of your near-death experience, but I was. I'll talk about that in the next video. Thanks so much. See you soon.